Well, happy Holy Week. This is a good week, and I look forward to all of the special services that we have beginning this Thursday with our Maundy Thursday service of Tenebrae. On Friday, our quiet meditations and our interactive uh, prayer stations for individuals and families. And of course, on Easter Sunday, um, our pancake breakfast at 8:30, from 8:30 to 9:30, and then the Easter service at 10 o'clock. It's going to be wonderful. It's going to be wonderful. And I hope that you will participate in any or all of that. Well, we're coming to a close today for this online retreat. We've been talking about intercessory prayer, praying for one another. And today I want to talk about praying for peace and justice. And then I want to close with a few remarks. How are we to pray for all the hungry children in the world? I mean, I know how to pray for people down the street in my neighborhood, but all the hungry children of the world, do we really even know where to begin? You know, the needs of our world can be very overwhelming, can't they? Our prayers seem so small and insignificant in the face of poverty and war and disasters. And yet, when we open our hearts to the struggles of others, how can we not pray? Several years ago, I taught a class on praying for justice and peace. And I invited the class to choose one particular area on which to focus their intercessory prayers. When they returned the following week, many of them had not made up their minds. They saw so much need in the world. They found it hard to choose just one issue over the others. They realized the fallacy of trying to pray for everything, but they found it difficult to leave any need out. So I'm going to challenge you to choose today where to focus your prayers for justice and peace. I think that would be the first part of today's practice. Allow your heart to guide you. You know, what in the national news or the world news tugs at your emotions? Where in the world would you like to give your energy of love? When you have decided, then I encourage you to follow the guidelines that we have been exploring these many weeks. I think this is our 7th week to be talking about praying for one another. Follow the guidelines that we have been exploring during these last many weeks. Start where your heart is. You may need to tell God about your confusion, about your feelings of inadequacy, or maybe even express your anger, the anger that you feel about a certain situation in the world. And as you continue to pray, pay attention to how your prayers may change. I remember one time a man coming to me in that class that I taught on praying for peace and justice. He said, I have chosen to pray for the victims of domestic violence. He had a friend stuck in such a situation whose experience led him to pray for all victims of that form of oppression. At the beginning, his prayers were angry He was outraged at God for allowing this to happen to so many people. He continued to pray, and then his prayers shifted. He realized that his anger was spent, and he was praying for them to be safe, to find courage, to act wisely. And he continued to pray, and then to his amazement, he began to pray for the perpetrators. He was surprised. That's not where he had started praying. But you see, if the cycle of domestic violence is to end, the perpetrators as well as the victims need healing. Our hearts change in many ways as we pray for peace and justice. A woman came to me and shared that she was praying for peace in the Middle East. There seems to always be a need for that kind of prayer. Peace in the Middle East. And her prayers began with strong directives. She was telling God what to do to bring about peace. You see, she had studied the issues extensively, and she believed that she knew what God should do. And as she continued her prayers for peace in the Middle East, she prayed with her insistent, demanding prayers. Suddenly she realized one day that she had put herself in control of the issue. God had become an instrument of her own will. As she continued to pray, she noticed that things shifted for her. She began to pray prayers of surrender, prayers that lifted the Middle East conflict and all the people affected by it into God's presence for a holy solution. And also, she recognized there were ways that she could act in her own community to contribute to a just and peaceful world. As I recall, she joined the Interfaith Alliance, and she volunteered her time and her skills to promoting dialogue among people of different faiths. You see, actions for justice and peace are powerful, nonverbal ways to pray. Mother Teresa said one time, "Don't look for spectacular actions. What is important is the gift of yourself. It is the degree of love you insert into your deeds that matters." When we're motivated by love, writing letters to our congressmen and women, serving in a food pantry, tutoring a child, registering voters, and an infinite number of other activities can become prayer for justice and peace. Rather than using words, we offer our prayers through acts of service. I encourage you to explore other methods of nonverbal prayer. What would a prayer of peace and justice look like if you danced it, or if you drew it, or painted it? Notice how your prayers shift over time. As they change, Notice if your heart changes as well. You could find yourself propelling into action. If you're a meditator, if you meditate, pay attention to how your heart holds your issue and how you let it go. So much of intercessory prayer in any form, be it verbal, nonverbal, action, or sitting, is the ongoing practice of letting go, praying and letting go, praying and letting go. Praying for justice and peace takes perseverance and patience. We have to be willing to pray even when we experience no response. This is when we need to revisit our theologies. How do your images of God help you in your prayers for justice and peace? This is how I stay faithful to my prayers. I believe God to be close to us and involved in creation. I believe that God hears our prayers. I believe that God's power to intervene or to interact, we talked about that many weeks ago. God's power to intervene and interact is sometimes tragically restricted in ways that we can't pretend to understand. And I'm encouraged by those words of Walter Wink, who was a theologian and social activist. Walter Wink said, "History belongs to the intercessors who believe the future into being." One more time. History belongs to the intercessors who believe the future into being. Well, a practice for today: decide what issue of peace and justice you're willing to pray for. Think about something not just for today, but for months to come. What in the national or world news would you like to give your energy of love to? Begin where you are. Begin in what ways feel right for you. Try different forms of prayer. Be aware of how your prayer changes over time. And don't forget to write about your experience in your journal. Well, we are coming to a close now after these 7 weeks. I thought maybe I would bring closure to this online retreat by summarizing the activities and the learnings, but I'm not sure how useful that would be. You know what these many weeks have meant to you. What do you take away from it? What fit for you? What was helpful to you? What was not helpful? I'd like to finish today open-ended. I certainly hope that your prayer life has deepened over these weeks. I hope that you have been encouraged to continue your practice of intercessory prayer. I hope that questions have been raised that you will continue to seek answers for. Closure is not appropriate for a faithful life of prayer. I do want to end with a few suggestions for ways to continue your practice. First of all, continue to pray for the people that you have attended to for these 7 weeks. If you'll remember, on the very first day, I asked you to pick some special person or family our community, our nation to pray for. Continue to pray for these people as well as those you've added to your list. And use the method of prayer which is most comfortable for you. But remember the other possibilities in case you lose your energy or you're distracted or you get bored. Stretch yourself into those forms of prayer that are less familiar to you, including general prayers of intercession, nonverbal prayers, and arrow prayers. Second suggestion, ask other people for prayers when you need them. Most people are honored by such requests. And third, make a commitment to pray for your particular issue of justice and peace. Be aware that you are a part of a large community of prayers. If you get discouraged, express your feelings of discouragement as part of your prayer. Pay attention to the ways that your own prayers, your own heart, and your own actions may be transformed. Intercessory prayer practice may be one part of your wider life of prayer. There are Sunday morning worship prayers. There are prayers while knitting prayer shawls. There are regular periods of meditation or centering prayer. You know, there was one woman who said to me, I have trouble finding time to pray. And she was rather discouraged that she had no regular practice. And I just simply raised the question, how would you pray if you were disciplined to do so? And you know what she said? She said, well, I think I would begin by some yoga stretches before reading the scriptures in the method of Lectio Divina. And I would follow that up with 20 minutes of silence in the method of centering prayer. And I would end with my intercessory prayers, my prayers for others, which is a long list. And then if I had time, I would write in my journal. And as she was answering my question, what would you do if you were disciplined? She realized how idealized and how unrealistic her plan was. I mean, she had too much. No wonder she didn't pray at all. Your rhythm of prayer will ebb and flow. And as life changes, and it certainly will, as life changes, you encounter new challenges and you discover new longings, and some old patterns will fade away. Be gentle with yourself in this matter of practicing prayer. Thomas Keating said one time that faithfulness in prayer is the willingness to always start over. Faithfulness in prayer is the willingness to always start over, to begin again. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this online retreat. As you skim over these last 7 weeks, one last question. What are you grateful for? What are you grateful for? Let words of gratitude rise. Be sure to write about this in your journal. Well, that does it. I wish you a blessed Holy Week and a very joyful, joyful Easter. God bless you. Amen.